The silence that asked for attention. There are children who never scream. They simply disappear inside themselves. You might have been one of them, learning early that silence was safer than disappointment. While others reached for hugs, you learned to stay small, invisible. It was love in reverse. If I'm easy, maybe they'll keep me. Over time, silence became your first language. It looked like maturity, but it was fear. Fear of being too much. Inside, unanswered questions echoed. Can anyone see me? Did anyone notice I stopped trying? A small body holding its breath, afraid to vanish completely. Emotional neglect slows time. Each unreturned glance becomes absence carved in memory. It wasn't just lack of attention, it was lack of reflection. Without a mirrored gaze, a child can't know if they're good, lovable enough. They just exist, unseen. And growing up unseen means shaping yourself around what's missing. You became skilled at reading moods, avoiding conflict, predicting danger. Love turned into vigilance. But no child was born to be invisible. The need to be seen is biological, not weakness. When it's denied, the brain erases parts of the self, emotions, desires, dreams. The adult appears, but incomplete. Being ignored is not the same as being rejected. Rejection hurts, but it's clear. Indifference is a void, and the void swallows you whole. Growing up emotionally neglected feels like living with an echo. Something in me doesn't matter. This child learns to observe, scanning every tone, every look for crumbs of recognition. Neuroscience shows the developing brain needs response to grow. Without it, the mind invents approval just to survive. As an adult, you seem functional, even admirable. You smile, help others, never complain, but inside lives a silent exhaustion, a lifelong attempt to earn what should have been natural. That's how emotional perfectionism is born, the endless drive to be good enough so you're never ignored again. To be perfect, pleasing, indispensable, all just the quiet cry, "Do you see me now?" Then comes the turning point. When you realize what was missing was never your fault, something shifts. The silence gains voice, the emptiness a name, and the search for approval slowly becomes a search for self. For the ignored child, love was never spontaneous. It was earned. Every bit of affection felt like a rare reward, teaching the brain to link love with effort. You didn't learn you were loved. You learned you had to deserve it. That pattern follows into adulthood. You try to be perfect, kind, available. But deep down, there's a constant fear of being too much or not enough. You fall in love trying to prove you're worth staying for. This creates uneven relationships. One gives, the other receives. The old reflex returns. If I'm good enough, no one will leave. But now, the fatigue has another name: loneliness. Love should not be survival. Yet for those who grew up unseen, love and vigilance intertwine. You scan moods, monitor tones, adjust yourself before others even notice, all to avoid being forgotten again. Healing begins when you understand that real love requires no performance. It blooms in rest, not effort. To love without fear, you must first be seen by yourself. Neglect doesn't fade with time. It settles in the body. The ignored child grows up tense, muscles braced to please, heart alert to disapproval. The body remembers what the mind could not say. I can't relax. In adulthood, that vigilance shows up as subtle symptoms: insomnia, fatigue, unexplained anxiety. The nervous system has forgotten what safety feels like. It doesn't know how to rest. You may have become too productive, too responsible, too controlled. Those are just armors, ways to survive a world that once ignored you. But beneath the competence lies a body begging to be heard. Reparenting begins there, not in doing more, but in feeling again, placing a hand over your heart and whispering, I'm here now. It's a dialogue between the adult you became and the child who was never comforted. Each conscious breath is a reminder you no longer need to live on alert. What once was survival can now become presence. When childhood was built on absence, silence can feel familiar, but not safe. Many adults who were ignored as children mistake calm for danger. When everything is peaceful, the body braces for impact. You might know that feeling, the unease of peace, the restlessness that comes when no one needs you. It's the brain trying to decode a world where love isn't tied to tension. For years, absence was the sound of home. The nervous system recorded it that way. Silence meant threat. Attention meant relief. So when someone offers genuine presence, your instinct is to retreat. Healing means retraining the body, learning that calm is not emptiness, that rest is not neglect, that being left in peace is not being left behind. At first, peaceful love feels foreign, but slowly the body learns a new language, one of safety, and what once felt like fear begins to feel like home. The ignored child grows up, yet a part of them stays by the window, still waiting for someone to return. Even as life moves on, one corner of the heart remains frozen in time, whispering, maybe now they'll see me. That's why so many adults chase approval, praise, recognition. It's the inner child still trying to prove they're lovable. You've changed the scenery, but not the script. Deep down, that waiting is an unanswered prayer, not for others' presence, but for your own. What that wounded part wants isn't attention, it's witness. It longs to be seen by who you've become. When you start to look at yourself with compassion, the waiting changes. The child realizes someone finally arrived, and that someone is you. That's the quiet pivot of healing, to see that what was missing back then can now be recreated through your own gaze. When no one came to comfort you, you learned not to need anyone. Hyper-independence looks like strength, but it's born from loneliness. The belief that depending is dangerous, that trusting means being forgotten again. You grew up too strong, too mature, too capable. People admired you, unaware it was protection. Behind the competence lived a child, exhausted from raising themselves too soon. Hyper-independence is a way to control the pain. If I do everything alone, no one can disappoint me. But living that way means carrying two weights, the adult and the child. And one day, both collapse. Healing doesn't mean becoming dependent. It means allowing yourself to be human, trusting slowly, asking for help even when it shakes you, letting care in, not as weakness, but as rebirth. True strength was never about doing it all. It's about allowing yourself to be held without fear of disappearing. The ignored child grows up with an invisible rule. Wanting love makes me needy. They learned that showing need led to silence, not safety. So they turned their hunger for affection into shame. As adults, That shame shows up in subtle ways. Compliments feel uncomfortable. Affection feels undeserved. Vulnerability feels wrong. The more you crave love, the less you believe you deserve it. That quiet guilt builds a wall. You give, but never receive. You smile, but never surrender. You love, but with brakes on. Deep down, you still fear being unseen all over again. But needing love is not weakness, it's nature. Every human brain is wired for connection. The wound was never needing, it was being taught that needing was wrong. Healing that guilt means remembering love isn't a reward, it's nourishment. And by existing, you are already worthy of it. There comes a moment when the mirror stops being the enemy. You look at yourself and realize that the tired expression isn't weakness, it's history. That the silence you carried was simply what was never spoken. Healing doesn't happen in grand gestures, but in small presences. Brushing your teeth without rushing, eating because you deserve pleasure, not just fuel. Sitting in peace without having to explain it. Seeing yourself means accepting that there was pain and beauty in survival. Every defense was an attempt at love, disguised as strength. You begin to speak to yourself the way you always needed someone to, with patience, warmth, and recognition. The brain slowly relearns what the heart always knew. You matter. And when you truly see yourself, the world shifts. The search for approval dissolves into presence. You finally become the adult your inner child was waiting for. Healing the ignored child isn't about forgetting. It's about integrating. Looking back without getting lost there. Saying, it happened to me, but it no longer defines me. You discover that being ignored never made you less worthy, only more aware. The emptiness that once hurt can now hold compassion, clarity, and love. The recognition you once waited for begins to rise from within. And when it does, something aligns. The body softens, the mind quiets, and the soul finally feels at home. To be seen by yourself is the highest act of repair. It ends the waiting. The presence you searched for outside was always inside, whispering to be heard. And now, gently, the question that once ached becomes an invitation. When did you realize you became the adult too soon? In the end, all the ignored child ever wanted was to be felt. Not pitied, understood. And maybe for the first time, they finally were. Now, it's your turn to keep that gaze alive. Not outward, but inward. If this story touched something inside you, don't ignore it. Type in the comments, I see myself now. Because that's where healing begins. The moment you finally stop being invisible, even to yourself.